look around, it's easy to see that a significant part of Thunder Bay's economy is built on a foundation of wood. From the very beginning, woodcutters ventured into the surrounding bush to fetch timber. Initially, this wood was used to build and heat homesteads. But before long, trees were needed to feed the voracious paper mills and sawmills that began to be built in our area. The boreal forest provided us with a seemingly endless supply of fiber, and Thunder Bay was soon a major source of pulp, newsprint, and lumber for the international market. Thousands of people earned their living in the mills or in the bush, and our region prospered greatly from the riches of the forest. Today, the forest sector is facing major challenges. Environmentalists and other legitimate users of the outdoors are opposing the industry's traditional access to this natural resource. Technology has caused dramatic employment reductions. What used to take dozens of workers is now accomplished with a single machine. Changing markets and the fluctuating value of the Canadian dollar have sent shockwaves through the forest industry. New and uncomfortable questions are now being asked. Will there be enough wood to supply our needs in the future? Will there continue to be buyers for our forest products, ensuring another generation of lumber, sawmill, and paper workers in Thunder Bay?
On our Woodlands side, certainly the pressures on the land base are an issue with parks and other values in the forest, and there's no question that they have to be accommodated, but we could do a better job than we currently are about accommodating those values and yet using that renewable resource we've got out there. It is a renewable resource that's often forgotten in all the rhetoric that goes around discussions of park, where park and other values, where it's almost painted as a sort of a devastated landscape on one side versus a beautiful green on the other, and it's just not like that. It is a renewable resource.
On the park issue, as workers see it, is that there is a problem out there, and I think when we see the size of a Wabakimi Park put into place, and our view was that part of that park could have been an integrated park. But somehow or another, tables got turned, and the park is now established that nobody's going to touch that area forever. And we're not against parks. We have to have parks. However, I think that we have to have parks set up so that all users are using them properly. But we're going to have parks that's wilderness parks, and we're going to have parks that's running on an integrated basis. It can be done better. The other thing that I also see is that as a taxpayer of Ontario, if that forest is tied up for tourist operators or is tied up for a park, then I guess the people that want to tie up that kind of forest should also look at paying their fair share of it, and these people don't.
The parks that are being taken out of the proposal, the areas that are taken out for caribou, areas taken out for moose corridors, and I guess one of the other things is the areas that the tourist operators are trying to get on remote lakes. And I guess these things bother us because we can work together with these groups, but if they extract too much, there's going to be nothing left for the industry to harvest. I see it that there's room to go in and extract certain amounts of timber in different areas. Because you get this over-mature timber, and if you don't do something with it, it's going to fall down and die, or it's going to burn up, and the people in the province of Ontario get no return whatsoever from that. And we think that, like Algonquin Park, they tried an experiment there. Why couldn't we do it at Wabakimi? The same thing. We've been cutting in that area. We don't go in and have to clear cut or things like that. There's ways of doing it, and that way everybody in Ontario benefits from this. But not if it's a wilderness park and it just sits there. Everybody is going to lose from it.
There has to be a process, I guess, for the two competing interests in the forest to get together, and I think we are working towards that and to improve that. I think that's one area I think we can do a better job than we've done in the past. I think, but there will have to be that use between the other users out there in the forest, and people will want to make sure that certain parts of the ecosystem are protected for future generations. What we have to do, though, is change our land use policies to some degree in Ontario. I think number one is we have to have very defined industrial land base so people can practice forestry like the companies have practiced. Number two is we have to have integrated zones that I call integrated zones where we practice forestry and other land use zones. And then we have to have zones that I would see that are protected zones in Ontario, that really there's no harvesting practiced in them.
How does Thunder Bay's location affect our competitiveness in the forest products industry? On the one hand, we are close to the source of the raw material. But on the other hand, we are a great distance from the end users of the products we produce. What role will transportation play in our future?
That's one of the things that we've done in Northern Ontario, if you look at the past of the pulp and paper industry, is that where is the greater amount of forestry jobs? It's not in Northern Ontario. Where's all the box plants and corrugated plants? They're in Southern Ontario.
I think a lot of the plants developed in Southern Ontario as a result closer to the availability of those particular products. They were there. The cardboard was there. It was easier rather than transport it up to Northern Ontario and then take other products back. I mean, I think there is an issue there, and I'm not sure you can totally beat that. It was close to the marketplace and close to where the urban people are and the use of it.
I don't agree with that, because I think that we've got a great transportation system out of northwestern Ontario, especially here in Thunder Bay with the lake here and rail and what have you. But that was a little of my understanding, that industry just would not build plants up here in northern Ontario. They were determined they were going to be built down there.
From the standpoint of the finished product and us getting in a globalized market into the European or the UK market, we've got a big disadvantage in Thunder Bay, because it takes 6 days for a ship to come up from the East Coast and 6 days to go back. And we're competing with the East Coast in those markets.
I think that it's really sad that we're losing infrastructure in northwestern Ontario transportation system at a time when we're increasing the number of mills, we're increasing the usage of wood, and at this time we're closing down rail lines. The Graham subdivision is a good example that could transport forest products. Our highways are facing bigger loads just in terms of traffic running through northwestern Ontario, never mind the increased traffic that caused by moving more forest products over those highways. And they're in pretty tough shape.
If you take a look at the structure of the transportation in Canada at one time, it was heavy rail. And free trade, if you look at the Americans, it's heavy truck. And I've always said with free trade that we would never bring the Americans our way. We're going to go their way. And trucking is going to become more and more so the way of transportation in Canada.
I believe the rail business, it has probably its place. It's going to be there. And so I don't think we should be thinking about it. We should be looking for new ways around the rail business to see if we can maintain it. And I don't think it'll go by the way of the dodo bird sort of thing. I think it'll be there, and we have to see what we can do to maintain some of these things, because there are important infrastructures required.
In the past, forestry companies were content to ship their products in a fairly raw state. Secondary manufacturing took place elsewhere. Today, the wisdom of letting this practice continue is being seriously questioned.
I think that we have to be doing a better end use of that product here in Canada. We have let our resources out of Northern Ontario disappear on us. And this is where we should be manufacturing it, is here, and build on it and hold jobs for our children and our children's children as we keep developing the market or the product here in the north, rather than letting it go. We shouldn't be letting our lumber go unless it's going to build a home or whatever, but it's remanufactured out of Canada.
We're trying to take a low-grade product, say 1x4 economy, and reworking that into paneling, into different products. We're looking now at Papoons Township, where we're putting in the hardwood plant. Again, not selling it as hardwood lumber, but bringing that in and finding a better use for it, like window frames, door frames. And we want to do that here in northwestern Ontario. This is one of the reasons that we started the solid wood research plant, is to try and find this value added that we can ship. We've found now that in, say, Italy, for instance, they used a product over there that's very similar to poplar for their window and door frames. And they want a clear piece of wood. Now, we can get that out of our poplar here. They've come over and looked at it. The product is fine. They wanted to have us ship the product over there, and they would do it. And we said, no, we're going to try and work it at our plant here. So this way, we're going to add employment here in northwestern Ontario.
I think northwestern Ontario has the opportunity for secondary manufacturing. I definitely believe that. I think we can engineer a product, change door frames, finger jointed wood, that type of stuff, containerize it and send it to Europe. They will require this wood over there. There's no doubt about that. I believe we have the products that can really do something. I don't think we should be sending out just our wood lumber. I don't think it's cost effective just sending out straight lumber. I don't think we can compete in the European market. And I'm not even sure that all of our lumber should be going into the US. I think we should be taking it and making as much engineered product as we can and seeing what added value we can put to it.
There was an awful lot of waste out there. You go out in the bush 15 years ago, you had the slashers where the ends were left out there. You know, probably in this whole area here, you probably left enough waste every year to run a paper mill. So you're using that whole tree now that we weren't using before, and that's a good environmental practice.
And I think that the proof is out there that we have been doing a good job, and that many of the things that were perhaps not done 100%, it is an evolutionary process, and we are doing a better job year to year as we learn more.
We've done a lot of different things now. I know, Bill, with your company and ours, we have an exchange relationship where before the whole tree went into the pulp mill, now the sawlog is coming to us and the chips are going back to the mill. So we're making a better use of that tree now than we used to in the past, where we all had our own turf and you know, you don't get on mine, I'm going to utilize the whole thing. And this wasn't good for the industry, and I think we're coming a long way.
The forest industry is developing new strategies for maximizing the potential of Ontario's woodlands. Innovative uses for many different species of trees are being found. The concept of the weed tree is swiftly becoming outmoded.
We've also diversified. We've also used products. We're also using some fiber out there that we've never really used a lot in the past, and that's poplar. We are starting to use all the resources around us, where in the past we've only used the conifer resource. I think we're doing a lot better job in Ontario today, especially in northwestern Ontario, but right across northern Ontario, to be able to use all the products that are surrounding us. And in the past, we were selective. We used black spruce. Then jack pine came along. We started to mix that in with our spruce component. We used the jack pine for some of our lumber. Now we're starting to use poplar both for all our product development here.
Yeah. For instance, the provincial mill here. At one time, chemicals were used to weighten the paper and everything else. Guess what they're using today? They're using poplar, which we were not using before. They're using 60,000 cords of poplar at that paper mill today that we were not using before. Instead, we were bringing chemicals in to do the job for us.
It's also the development of markets, though. I mean, you've got to, if you make a product, you've got to have a market that'll accept it. And I think the industry has been working very hard on that. And It's obviously because there was some advantages in terms of scale of operations. Now you can move into an area and on a road system and essentially get more wood to that road system because you're harvesting all the species in a block. And that's certainly the way we're looking at it. That's the way we're looking at our changeover to in wood handling facilities, the changes in our mills. We're doing things like technological change to look at Tom's and Buchanan's mill, hardwood mill, is going to be using or producing birch chips, and we've never used birch chips in Thunder Bay. We've got to find a way. It's in our backyard, and we've got to find a way to utilize that.
It was called a weed tree in the past. It was balsam, and the budworm went through and killed it all. But we went in and extracted that and made lumber from it. And we're now planting spruce and pine back in that area where the balsam was. And that balsam, we could have left it, and it would have fallen down and died, and nobody would have benefited from it. But I don't think a lot of people realize, that we're using balsam as well.
The charge has been leveled by environmentalists and others that the forest industry hasn't done enough in terms of renewing this natural resource. What measures are being taken to ensure the availability of wood to meet our future needs?
Well, I think it's more intensive forestry. I think the companies today have got the greatest opportunity they've ever had in their entire life in Ontario. We've just made a policy change in Ontario where we've put some of the stumpage money into forestry trust funds in Ontario, and from that the companies will practice sustainable forestry from that. And I think this is a great change. We've put that in the hands of the industry who want to be sustainable, who can be sustainable, and they will look after it and produce a high quality product out there on that land base. But I still believe the public out there sees the forest industry as a group that still is not concerned about the future of the ecosystem, a future as to sustainability and diversity out there. They still don't believe that the forest industry has done enough.
I think it's an issue of this business of point in time. When someone looks at a clear cut, they're looking at it at a point in time, and if it's soon after the harvest, it looks like one thing. If they could go back 20 years later and remember it, they'd certainly see a different picture. The forest is 20 feet high, solid jack pine, aspen ridges running through it, and so on. Very much like the original forest that was there. Regeneration worked and worked well. That's a very, very powerful force. And that's what we're dealing with in the forest. It does turn green. We are able to do silviculture and bring back forests. And I'm not sure that the public really, really understands that one.
But there is that certain group or groups that no matter what you tell them, they'll find fault with the timber industry forever. And again, as someone mentioned earlier, it is a renewable resource, and a lot of people don't realize that. They think you cut the tree down and like mining, that's finished when it's done. But with trees, they grow again, and we're building a better forest now by planting it ourselves than if it grew by itself.
I think we have a sustainable supply, and it'll run in the conifer of around 15 million cubic meters in northwestern Ontario, and probably another 5 million cubic meters of hardwood. I think we have a sustainable supply. What we have to make sure is we maintain that and probably grow it on probably a smaller land base in the future.
What is the outlook for the forest industry in Thunder Bay? Will this sector continue to play a dominant role in the economy of our region? Will the industry be equal to the challenges it faces, so there will be jobs in the future?
I believe that we're always going to have jobs in the forest industry, but it's not going to come by sitting back thinking it's going to happen. We're going to all have to work at it, whether it's government, industry, or labor working people because it has to be done together. We have to keep beating at it on the better end use of the product.
I think we need professionals in the environmental side that can show leadership, that can take Ontario a long ways. I believe we need technologists to be able to work in our mills and our facilities to make sure we have good value-added products. So I believe there's a future.
There's lots of opportunities, and I'll speak of the mill end of it in particular. We are short of technical people all the time. We need millwrights, we need mechanics, we need saw filers, and our idea is to keep as many people working as we can. But I think there's lots of time, and the opportunities for young people here in northwestern Ontario are great.
First of all, North American, the softwood craft pulp is a northern boreal forest pulp is a very high value product if it's well manufactured. And I don't think there's any place that's a better base for that than right here in northwestern Ontario. And certainly our company is looking at northwestern Ontario as being our base. We have to develop leadership in our industry, and I think that we have to help young people coming into our businesses to do that. Some of the challenges we've been talking about, we're going to require good strategic leadership to get us through those. And well, talk about challenges, or you can talk about them as opportunities. If you look at them as opportunities, you're going to need the leadership to get us there.